In the vast expanse of the galaxy, Earth was nothing more than a small, insignificant planet. Surrounded by a cosmos filled with ancient civilizations, mighty species, and advanced technologies, humanity's achievements were often laughed at. The greatest powers in the galaxy saw humans as nothing more than a curiosity. Their ships, primitive compared to the sleek, powerful vessels of the galactic elite, could barely navigate the stars. Their weapons were outdated, and their knowledge of the galaxy was still in its infancy. No one took them seriously. Galactic leaders, meeting in the high councils of distant star systems, often exchanged amused glances when the subject of humans came up. A species that still relies on fossil fuels? One leader scoffed. It's laughable, another said. They can barely defend their own planet, let alone play a role in galactic affairs. The mocking words echoed across the universe. From one end to the other, each ruler and warlord taking their turn to dismiss the humans as nothing more than a fleeting spectacle, a race destined to fade into obscurity. To them, humanity's future seemed written in the stars, a future where they would never rise above their modest beginnings. The humans, however, were unaware of the galaxy's laughter. They had their own concerns, their own ambitions. Earth had seen the rise and fall of many empires, and yet, in the face of mockery, they remained determined. They believed in the value of their species, in their potential to grow and evolve. Even though their technological advances lagged far behind, they had something that no other species seemed to have: an unyielding will to survive and adapt. The world's leaders, scientists, and military commanders understood that the galaxy's mockery might be seen as a challenge, a test of what humanity could achieve. But for the rest of the galaxy, the thought of humanity's rise to power seemed impossible. From Earth's perspective, the universe was a vast, intimidating place. Messages from alien species sometimes arrived, filled with condescension or mockery. Your planet is quaint, one message read, but you will never understand the true power of the cosmos. Despite the insult, the humans pressed forward. They didn't know how to respond to the galaxy's scorn except to push harder, to strive further. Some said that the mockery was unfair, but most understood that the galaxy saw no reason to take them seriously. Why would they? Humans were just beginning to explore the stars, and their technology was still in its infancy. On Earth, however, there were whispers. Whispers among the brightest minds, the sharpest military strategists, and the engineers who dreamed of a future where humanity wasn't dismissed as weak. They saw the galactic power's dismissal not as an insult, but as an opportunity. It was in these quiet moments, away from the eyes of the public, that humanity's true potential began to take shape. The brightest minds of Earth began working on a project so ambitious it would change the course of history. They were determined to prove the galaxy wrong. They began to design ships that could travel faster than anything the galaxy had ever seen, weapons more powerful than anything known in any star system, and technology that would allow them to take on the greatest powers in the universe. Their project was secret, of course. If the galaxy knew what was happening behind closed doors, they would have laughed even harder. They thought the humans were still far too weak to pose any real threat. But behind their backs, the humans worked. Each day, each hour was spent improving, learning, and pushing the limits of their capabilities. They were determined to do the impossible. They had no other choice. But, as they worked tirelessly to prepare, the mockery of the galaxy continued. The powerful alien empires, with their towering ships and enormous fleets, laughed whenever they heard of humanity's space endeavors. Their governments would send messages to Earth, filled with mocking laughter, saying things like, "When you are ready to join the galaxy, perhaps we will teach you something useful." These messages were meant to belittle humanity, to show them their place in the grand order of things. The most powerful of these mocking empires was the Zoran Dominion. Known for their advanced technology and ruthless military, the Zorans had crushed countless civilizations in their rise to power. They were the most vocal in their dismissal of humanity, often ridiculing their primitive weapons and outdated ships. They would send messages to Earth, taunting the humans. "You will never be anything more than a footnote in the history of the galaxy," they would say. "When you are ready to learn, we will show you how real power works." Yet, every time these messages arrived, the humans became more determined, Their leaders knew that this mockery was a sign of something bigger. If they could prove the galaxy wrong, it would change everything. It wouldn't just be about proving their worth. It would be about showing the galaxy that the humans were not to be underestimated. As the years passed, the humans' work continued in secret. The world's greatest minds came together, pooling their knowledge and resources to build something that would rival the galaxy's mightiest empire. But none of them knew how much longer they would have before the galaxy's laughter turned into something darker. Would the galaxy eventually turn its eyes to Earth? Would they see humanity's potential too late? The galaxy, for all its sophistication and power, continued to overlook one thing: the human spirit. In every corner of Earth, from the bustling cities to the quiet rural towns, there was a quiet, burning desire to prove the galaxy wrong. Every human, whether they were an engineer, a soldier, or a scientist, carried the weight of this mockery on their shoulders. And every day, they worked harder to ensure that one day, the galaxy would remember who the humans were. And so, as the mocking messages from the galaxy continued to flood Earth's communication channels, the humans only grew more focused. The laughter echoed across the universe, but deep within Earth's darkest corners, where the plans for humanity's rise were being crafted, there was one simple thought: this laughter will stop soon. After years of being mocked, ignored, and underestimated by the powerful empires of the galaxy, humanity quietly reached a point where they could no longer accept the laughter. On the surface, nothing had changed. Earth continued its normal routines, its people lived their daily lives, and the galaxy still considered them a background noise in the grand cosmic stage. But deep beneath the surface, in underground bases, hidden research stations, and off-world colonies, a silent movement had begun. The leaders of Earth, along with the greatest minds from every nation, had formed a secret alliance. This alliance was not about politics or power. It was about survival, dignity, and proving to the universe that humanity would not be a forgotten species. They understood clearly now that the galaxy would never take them seriously unless they forced it to. There would be no respect given freely. It had to be earned, and if necessary, taken by force. The human scientists, engineers, and strategists had begun to see the galaxy's arrogance as a valuable opportunity. While the other civilizations watched humans with amused smiles, they never bothered to spy or interfere. That gave Earth something rare in a galaxy full of eyes: privacy. This allowed them to work in secret and in silence, away from the curiosity of alien empires who believed humans were too backward to matter. The Alliance launched a project unlike anything the planet had seen before: Project Horizon. Its goal was simple in idea, but massive in scope: build a fleet that could challenge the greatest powers in the galaxy. A fleet that would be fast, powerful, and intelligent. A fleet that could defend Earth from anything and show the universe what it meant to push a species with nothing left to lose. It would take every resource, every drop of knowledge, and every ounce of willpower the human race could gather. But they were ready. The first step was learning. Human researchers poured through every scrap of alien data they could find: salvaged wrecks from skirmishes, intercepted transmissions, even old trade manuals stolen from galactic smugglers. From these fragments, they began to piece together the puzzle of galactic technology. Where other races had developed power through time, humans now raced through centuries of progress in mere years. They didn't just copy, they improved, changed, reworked. Human minds found flaws in designs that had remained unchanged for generations. They discovered better ways to manage energy, new types of weapon systems, and faster methods of travel. What took other species 1,000 years to master, humanity achieved in 50. Meanwhile, military leaders were preparing as well. They trained soldiers not just for war, but for something much harder: fighting in space against enemies who had fought in the stars for thousands of years. These soldiers weren't raised to follow old tactics. They were trained to think like the enemy, adapt, and strike without mercy. Simulations were created to mimic alien war zones. New weapons were designed that could function in the vacuum of space, through radiation storms, and inside enemy ships. Old divisions between nations disappeared. Advanced ships humanity had ever created were born. They were unlike any ships the galaxy had seen: dark, sharp-edged giants equipped with energy weapons strong enough to destroy a planet's shield, armor that could bend light and avoid detection, and engines that could fold space and leap across star systems in seconds. These ships weren't just built for defense, they were built to leave a mark. The galaxy, still laughing, had no idea what was coming. The Zoran Dominion continued to send mocking messages, calling Earth the child world and joking that humans should stick to farming rather than flying. But their pride blinded them. They didn't notice the silence that had fallen around Earth. They didn't notice how the human ambassadors had stopped sending replies, how their outposts had gone quiet, or how their spies were disappearing. It was as if Earth had gone to sleep. But in truth, Earth was wide awake and preparing. The Alliance had one simple rule: no response, no threat, and no action until the fleet was ready. When the time came, the galaxy wouldn't hear a warning. They would only see what humans had become. Years passed, and Project Horizon reached its final stage. 100 warships stood ready in the shadows of Saturn's rings, hidden from view. Each one named after a piece of human history. Each one crewed by soldiers who had trained in silence for years. And at the heart of it all, one command ship called Vindicator stood as the symbol of Earth's new strength. From its bridge, the human commander looked out into the stars, not with fear, but with purpose. They had not rushed into war. They had waited, prepared, and grown strong. Now, the time for waiting was over. The humans were not coming to beg for a seat at the galactic table. They were coming to flip it over and build their own. Back on Earth, the people still didn't know the full truth, but they could feel something changing. The silence of the stars had grown heavier. There were rumors about ships no one had seen before, about a fleet waiting beyond the planets, about leaders meeting in secret, and scientists disappearing. The public didn't know what was real. But somewhere deep in their hearts, the human spirits stirred. That strange, stubborn fire that had always pushed them forward, even when the odds were against them. It whispered that something was coming. That one day, very soon, the laughter of the galaxy would stop. The silence before the storm was chilling. The galaxy still laughed, unaware that humanity had stopped listening. Somewhere between Saturn's rings, Earth's hidden fleet had awakened from the shadows. The time for patience had ended. The message sent by the human command was simple and clear: no more mockery. No more silence. We respond now. Within hours, the great human fleet began to move, each ship sliding forward through space like wolves released from a cage. The galaxy didn't see them coming, not because the ships were invisible, but because no one believed Earth had the courage or the technology to strike. That was the galaxy's first mistake. The target was chosen carefully: a Zoran-controlled planet named Trevak 5, a military outpost where Earth's ambassadors had once been laughed at and humiliated. It was symbolic, and it was strategic. The humans didn't want to start a war, they wanted to end the jokes. When the first human ship dropped out of warp near Trevak 5, the planetary scanners didn't even sound an alarm. The Zorans assumed it was a malfunction. Then 2 more ships appeared. Then 5. Then a dozen. When the entire human fleet emerged, the Zoran commanders finally understood something was terribly wrong. Panic replaced arrogance. They scrambled to activate shields, but it was too late. The humans had timed everything to the second. They fired precision weapons that disabled defense systems without harming civilians. Communications were jammed, hangars were sealed shut, and the skies above Trevak 5 turned dark with the shadows of Earth's warships. The Zorans had always believed humans were weak. Now, they watched in silence as those same weak creatures controlled their sky in minutes. No one laughed now. From the bridge of the Vindicator, Commander Rael Dalton gave his orders without emotion. He didn't shout, he didn't boast. His crew worked in silence, trained for this moment. The fleet moved like a single mind. They struck only military targets, avoiding unnecessary destruction. The message was not about chaos, it was about control. The Zoran forces tried to resist, but their weapons were outdated, their tactics predictable. The humans had studied them, understood them, and now used that knowledge to defeat them with terrifying ease. In under 2 hours, the planet's defenses were destroyed, and its command center surrendered. The humans didn't demand anything. They didn't insult or threaten. They simply left behind a warning: mock us again, and next time, we won't be this kind. Word of the attack spread like fire through the galaxy. Trevik 5 had been one of the strongest Zoran military zones. Now it belonged to no one. The footage of human ships covering the skies was watched in silence by hundreds of alien leaders. Meetings were called in every corner of the galaxy. The humans had not asked for respect, they had taken it. The same races that once laughed now whispered in fear. Who were these humans, really? How did they become this powerful without anyone noticing? And the most terrifying question of all, what else were they hiding? The Galactic Council held an emergency session, but the humans didn't attend. They had made their point. The universe could no longer pretend they didn't exist. The Zoran Dominion, shamed and humiliated, wanted revenge. Their pride had been crushed, their forces exposed. They gathered a massive retaliation fleet, over 500 warships from across their territories. They called it the Purge, believing they could crush Earth with overwhelming numbers. But Earth was ready. The Vindicator had not returned to Earth. It waited in deep space, tracking every movement the Zorans made. Human intelligence systems had already predicted the enemy's path. Traps were set, ambush points established. When the Zoran fleet reached the border of human space, they found it empty. No resistance, no sign of life. Just silence. Confused, they moved forward. That's when it happened. 100 human ships uncloaked from asteroid fields and nebulae, attacking from all sides. It wasn't a battle. It was a message, one louder than words. The Zorans, confident in their power, were now surrounded and outmatched. Their ships fell one by one, not from brute force, but from precise, calculated strikes. Human weapons tore through shields. Their fighters danced through enemy lines, fast and sharp like knives through cloth. The Zorans fought hard, but their fleet collapsed in less than a day. Survivors were allowed to retreat not because the humans showed mercy, but because they wanted them to carry the story home. Tell your leaders, tell your allies, tell the galaxy Earth is no longer a weak world. Earth is watching, waiting, and ready. Back on Earth, the people finally learned the truth. The silence was broken. News of the fleet's victory spread across every screen, every city, every home. There was shock, pride, and fear. They had always hoped to earn the galaxy's respect. Now, they had taken it by force. For the first time, humanity felt the weight of true power. They were no longer hidden, no longer ignored. But with power came danger. They had drawn the attention of every major force in the galaxy. Some would come to negotiate. Others would come to destroy. And Earth would have to stand strong, not just with weapons, but with wisdom. They had shown the galaxy who they were, but what came next would decide who they would become. As the stars shimmered above, the fleet began to regroup. There were no cheers, no celebration, only focus. This was not the end. It was only the beginning. Commander Dalton stood once more at the window of the Vindicator, looking into the deep, endless dark of space. He knew more enemies would come. He knew fear and hatred would grow. But he also knew that Earth had finally spoken. Not with words, but with action. And that action had changed everything. The showdown was over, but the war for respect, survival, and truth had just begun. Even after the massive defeat of the Zoran fleet, the galaxy was still restless. The silence from Earth after the showdown made many alien empires more nervous than the attack itself. Humanity had returned to the shadows, not out of fear, but by choice. They didn't send messages, didn't celebrate, didn't make speeches. They just disappeared into space, their ships vanishing like ghosts. This silence was louder than any battle cry, and it made many leaders wonder what Earth would do next. Some wanted peace, others wanted revenge, but most were simply afraid. The Zorans were the most humiliated. Their military power shattered, their pride crushed, their name mocked across the stars. But instead of learning from defeat, They decided to strike back, this time using treachery instead of force. They knew they couldn't win a fair war, so they planned something humans would never expect, a secret attack deep inside Earth's system, targeting the very heart of humanity. The Zorans used allies, spies, and hidden routes through uncharted sectors. They gathered stealth ships silent, fast, and almost impossible to track. These ships didn't carry large weapons, but were loaded with sabotage teams trained to cause destruction from within. The plan was simple but dangerous. Sneak past Earth's early warning systems, enter orbit, and destroy critical technology centers to cripple human communication and defense. If it worked, as the Zoran strike force entered the solar system, moving quietly through the shadows of moons and asteroids, they felt confident. No alarms sounded, no human ships approached, no resistance appeared. They reached Earth orbit with ease, slipping into position like invisible snakes. The teams deployed quickly, heading toward key targets, satellite hubs, orbital relay stations, and command platforms. The mission seemed too easy until everything changed. Just as the first team planted a charge on a satellite tower, a red light blinked across the device. A voice spoke softly from hidden speakers, "Target acquired." Before the Zorans could react, the satellite exploded outward, not from a bomb, but from a trap. The explosion was controlled, blinding but not damaging. It sent a signal through space, waking up Earth's true defenses. In less than 10 seconds, dozens of cloaked human ships decloaked from every direction. They had been waiting, watching, tracking the intruders since they crossed the Kuiper Belt. Earth had known about the attack all along. The silence was a mask. The Zoran ships tried to escape, but it was already too late. Human ships moved like hunters, cutting off every path, jamming every signal. One by one, the stealth ships were captured or destroyed. The sabotage teams, trained for stealth, found themselves outmatched by human AI drones that hunted through corridors and compartments like shadows. Within minutes, the entire Zoran surprise attack collapsed. But Earth didn't stop there. Instead of destroying everything, they let a few Zoran agents escape on purpose. These agents returned to their empire with a story that would shake the galaxy. Earth knew, Earth watched, and Earth chose when to strike. The message was clear. There is no place to hide from human eyes now. But even that wasn't the true surprise. While the galaxy focused on the failed Zoran attack, Earth quietly launched a mission of its own. A small fleet of advanced human ships entered deep space, moving through hidden wormholes and dark energy currents. Their target was a hidden Zoran research station located in the outer rim of the galaxy, a place so secret even most Zorans didn't know it existed. This station was building experimental weapons meant to counter human technology, and Earth had decided to shut it down before it became a threat. The human strike team reached the station in the dead of night, galactic night, where no suns shine and space is as black as death. They didn't announce their arrival. They didn't ask questions. The station's defense systems never even activated. The humans used precision EMP blasts to shut down power, entered silently through maintenance ports, and captured every scientist and soldier inside. Not one life was lost. The facility was stripped of technology, then destroyed from within. The humans left behind nothing but a warning beacon. We see deeper than you know. When the Zoran leadership found out, they didn't call for war. They fell into chaos. Their secrets were no longer safe. Their shadows no longer hid them. Earth had changed everything. Across the galaxy, empires began to shift. Some sent peace envoys to Earth, hoping to avoid conflict. Others stayed quiet, rethinking their strategies. A few dared to test the edges of human space, but none crossed the line. Earth, once mocked, now stood like a giant in the minds of every species. They didn't claim planets or demand tribute. They didn't show off power, they showed control. And that was more terrifying than any weapon. The surprise attack meant to humiliate Earth had only made it stronger. Humanity now controlled the narrative, and the galaxy was listening. But Earth knew this was just the beginning. Power brought attention. Attention brought enemies. Somewhere out there, someone was already planning the next move. And Earth would be ready. The galaxy had changed. It didn't happen with loud declarations or public treaties, but in quiet boardrooms, encrypted transmissions, and whispered conversations between leaders who once mocked Earth. The failed surprise attack by the Zorans, followed by the terrifying precision of Earth's silent counterstrike, forced everyone to rethink everything they thought they knew about humans. They had seen human strength in battle, but this was something different. This was strategy. This was patience. This was a kind of power that didn't need to shout. The same races that had once laughed at humans now watched their every move with careful eyes. No one dared speak openly against them anymore. It wasn't just fear that spread, it was respect, and it was earned the hard way. On Earth, the change was felt too. Humans didn't celebrate their victory, didn't throw parades or write songs. They continued forward, as if war and diplomacy were simply parts of a greater journey. They started building again quietly, efficiently, expanding their fleets not for conquest, but for defense and exploration. New research centers were opened, and human scientists shared selective knowledge with a few trusted allies, not to prove superiority, but to build trust. That balance of power and wisdom became Earth's most valuable weapon. Meanwhile, across different star systems, ancient empires began to open dialogues with humans. Some sent envoys not with weapons, but with books, art, and history, hoping to understand the minds that had turned the tide of power in just a few years. A few once hostile species even offered apologies, something unheard of in intergalactic politics. One by one, planets started requesting diplomatic relations with Earth's United Human Alliance. Trade routes opened. Scientific exchanges began. Military officers from other worlds requested training from human veterans, eager to learn how Earth prepared for battles and surprises. Even the most powerful empires, who had once viewed humans as a joke, now treated them as equals. But Earth never demanded submission. They never imposed rules or conditions. Instead, they listened, watched, and acted only when needed. That control, that balance, became a symbol of leadership in a galaxy that had forgotten how to lead without war. On the Zoran homeworld, the situation was worse than ever. After their defeat and the destruction of their secret research base, their government collapsed under pressure. Protests spread across cities. Generals were arrested. Scientists vanished. The Zoran people had lost faith in their leaders, and some even began to admire humans. It was a shocking shift. Holograms of Earth space battles were shown in underground networks, not as warnings, but as inspiration. Strength with control, they whispered. The new leaders of Zoran had no choice but to reach out to Earth, not for surrender, but for peace. And when they did, they didn't send threats or demands. They sent a message that stunned the galaxy. We misjudged you. We are ready to listen. Earth responded not with punishment, but with a single human ambassador, who arrived with no army, no escort, just a data crystal containing Earth's proposal for cooperation, knowledge sharing, and cultural exchange. That moment became historic, not because it marked peace with an enemy, but because it symbolized the beginning of something bigger. All around the galaxy, species began to shift their focus. Instead of building warships, they invested in diplomacy. Instead of planning invasions, they planned joint missions into unexplored sectors. Humans began working with aliens in peacekeeping operations. Mixed crews served aboard starships flying Earth's colors alongside others. For the first time, there was real unity, even if fragile. And it all started because Earth showed the galaxy what quiet strength really looked like. But humans remained cautious. They knew the galaxy could not be trusted forever. Somewhere in the shadows, someone would still be plotting, still dreaming of domination. But Earth was ready. Not just with weapons, but with allies, with experience, and with the respect of 1,000 worlds. That respect was not just for their power, but for their restraint. It was something even the oldest empires struggled to earn. In hidden corners of space, stories were told about the rise of humanity. Some called them ghosts of war, others called them guardians. Children on alien worlds grew up hearing tales of the Fleet of Silence, the human armada that appeared and disappeared like shadows. Merchants traded in Earth-made goods, which became symbols of high quality and strength. Even language started to change. Words from human languages were adopted by alien cultures, especially the word unity, which became a sign of hope. In this new era, Earth didn't need to dominate to lead.